All right, dude. Thank you, Alex Sutherland, for joining us here today on another episode of the podcast that we still haven't come up with a name with. And today's topic is the first steps in fitness. Uh, I would say I slaved away really hard to make this presentation, and one may say that's a fair thing, but I also didn't break my
Was
back.
misspelled a lot of things, but don't
Miss,
worry, he's a gym bro, Spelling's not his forte.
spelling is not my forte, nor is math, but like movement, that's my shit.
There you go.
Uh,
That's all that matters.
Boom. All right, guys, about me. Owner of Pickle Fitness. I'm a strength conditioning coach. I geek out on science, movement, and performance, as well as like helping people in their everyday to day lives. A couple ways to find me, contact me. There's my email, there's my IG. I've put Alex's email on the in the end of this presentation, so you'll be seeing some of Alex there. And of course, I'm also the creator and manager of the Facebook group Nerds Who Lift Weights. If you're a nerd and you like to lift weights, you like anime, definitely come join us in that Facebook group and learn some stuff. Alex, give a little bit of tidbits about yourself.
I've been a rowing coach ever since 2020, so that's now about 5 years.
Ooh,
Um, I've really got into strength and conditioning in the last 3 years. Working on my getting my CS certification. It's a long process, but we're getting there.
there we go.
But yeah, my specialization has been rowing. So I've been a rowing coach in Texas, and I just recently moved to Canada, where I'm a head coach here. But yeah, rowing is kind of my jam. But
Well, let's see how we can relate your gym to just like fitness in general, right? Because don't be wrong, I believe that, rowing within itself is a sport and there are people who compete at the highest level, but I think rowing is also an activity that can be done for the general population if done properly, if done well,
really,
safely, and
yeah.
intelligently.
It's a hard sport, to learn at the beginning, but it's a great full body workout. And if you know how to do it properly, then there shouldn't be too much. It's great for you. It's a great workout.
Let's go. Boom. All right, so where to start? You're a newbie, you just walk into a gym, and obviously there's everything. You got dumbbells, machines, you have a treadmill, so on and so forth, and you really don't know where to go. And so me and Alex are kind of break it down and get to tell you. Alex, for your perspective, obviously you're a rowing coach, you're starting to study strength conditioning and get those principles. Where would you recommend someone get started within their first steps in fitness? Not necessarily just rowing, because you can add that in there, but where would you put someone's first steps?
First thing is learning technique, right? So in terms of, I am thinking about rowing here just because that's just how my brain works, but making sure you can do the motions that you're going to be doing repetitively, properly, and building that stability first, right? Is kind of like the most important thing before you're focusing on actual true performance. So like when I'm coaching on the water, like a novice rower, either it's a kid or an adult, whoever it might be, you're making sure that they know how to use their body correctly, and building those basics first, a good base before we actually do anything else.
Man, that's a good way to say that actually. How much like
Surprised. Why are you surprised?
I'm
Just,
I'm not surprised. I was gonna see if I could change how our faces are because I'm not sure if that'll impact the layout of this presentation, but right in it, so I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I like that you talked about technique, and that's like an important thing. Most people advocate for like starting off with your free weights going in first, right? However, not everyone is like super coordinated. Starting off with free weights first could actually potentially lead you to injury if your technique, like you said, if how you're moving your body isn't correctly, right? I've seen people deadlift without knowing how to deadlift, and I've then seen horrible things that haunt my nightmares for the rest of my life because they didn't know how to deadlift and they went to go deadlift heavy. Um, so from a strength conditioning coach like perspective, my where I say to get started is like muscle tissue capacity. Um, and like positional like strength and awareness, kind of like you said, which essentially like equates to technique. So I'm actually an advocate for if you're new to the gym, if you've never worked out, I'd actually advocate for starting on machines first because they don't let you deviate from the pattern that keeps you safe. It's hard to hurt yourself on a machine. Not impossible, but it's harder than but you can easily drop a dumbbell on your foot or on your head. So once again, I advocate for machines first, build some muscle tissue capacity. Like it's easier to Bulgarian split squat, after you've already built some strength doing leg extensions, your quad stronger, right? So you'll be able to do that. Boom. Building your base. So obviously progress is assisted by methodology and strategy, right? That's why coaches like us exist. And if we look at it from like a sports perspective, specialization requires prerequisites. And the lowest prerequisite on the specialization scale from a strength and conditioning coach perspective is general physical preparedness, GPP. And we can talk about that later. And just an example, strength is a predecessor to power. Um, Alex, for you, when you look at fitness or if you look at a rower, what is your GPP for them and what is specialization for them?
Okay, so I mean, the making sure they're prepared is definitely, rowing is a complex sport. It's a involves a pushing motion and a pulling motion and connecting those two things together, right? So we have to make sure that they do it correctly. Um, so the first thing is kind of making sure they can do that correctly and then consistently.
Mm,
So the more strokes you can take, the better, if that makes sense, right? So in a controlled environment, right? So a lot of technique training and then going hard in a short time at first, right? And in a controlled manner, right? Doing too much fatigued rowing at the beginning will just lead to injury, and which is no good, right? And I know you and I are going to talk about injury later. So specialization is when, you kind of focus on, okay, right, so where are we weak, right? And attacking those weak points and making them strengths, or at least not weaknesses. So, I know you and I were working on transport right now because AT is kind of like in a good place. But and for those that don't know those things, don't worry. I'm sure, it can be explained later. But just, attacking certain zones and things like that through periodization of some sort, and all that stuff. So, but at the beginning, you don't need to worry about that. You just need to be making sure that you are taking strokes in a controlled manner. So, like when I coached like novice juniors, every day on the water was basically technique, right? Technique and low rate rowing. And then on the rowing machines, where it's a little bit more controlled and technique matters a little bit less, that's when they can go kind of fast because they are less likely to hurt themselves because you can kind of control drag factor, which is the resistance, versus on the water, bad timing or just poor technique will cause injury and there's less control. So if that makes sense. So
That
yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And I would say um, one thing that I would add that where a lot of people don't know, won't realize is specialization isn't always necessarily like all like most people start fitness in order to be healthy. Specialization isn't always like also a health oriented thing, right? And I'm just thinking about like from a rowing perspective. As a coach, there's we have sculling and sweeping, right? I only know this because I row. And I scull. That's my primary thing. But I can sweep. However, I don't know anyone who will like sweep with me like in a pair or like a four and who will like swap port to star, right? You have a lot of like of people in college, in college, like you're young, you're made out of rubber. You like it's easier for you to survive sweeping on one side day after day, month after month. But like older results, older adults, when you specialize, when you're like, I'm a port, like, and that you stand on that business, you stand on being a port. Uh, Over time, if that's all you do, if you keep turning and pulling from the same direction without doing the requisite other side to help that, you create an imbalance, right? That's a downside of a sport specific specialization, if you will. Would you agree, disagree?
I would agree. Yeah, that's kind of that a main issue in rowing, especially, is that so in collegiate rowing, mostly it's sweeping. And for those that don't know, sweeping means kind of like you've got one oar in your hand and you only control moving the boat one way, right? So moving it to the right or moving it to the left, right? In order to row, you need to row straight. So that means you're relying on another person to control the other side of the boat. Okay. So if you're only focusing on moving the boat to the right, then you're not building muscle that helps you maybe move it to the left. And those imbalances will cause you to get injured, and have pain and be out, right? And then you're no longer getting faster anymore because you're injured. So yeah, you got to make sure that you row both sides or you focus on your technique and make sure you don't have pain, because if you don't work out, you don't get faster. You only get faster by working out.
The number one way to keep progressing people is to not get hurt. Which is,
Exactly. Yeah.
and if you do get hurt, then you got to come see us anyways. So, yeah. Boom. Next, your focus. So once again, I believe there's two new to fitness. There's two places that would demand both your attention. Strength and stability, which, as Alex also said, would be like technique from his perspective, and then like aerobic capacity. And so when I define like strength and stability team, I'm talking about your muscle tissue capacity, like how much force can your muscles produce and absorb, because the more amount of force they can produce and more amount of force they can absorb, the safer you'll be. Can we keep your joints in a position or in alignment that keep you safe? For example, everyone's seen like a squat that makes you have like a heart attack because you see someone's knees cave in. That's not good stability when your knees cave in, right? That leads to potential risk and or injury. So we don't want that. That's unstable. So that's what I talk about when I talk about strength and stability. Aerobic capacity to me, that's your zone two training, and that's essentially keeping your heart rate in a place where see aerobic benefits and increase aerobic capacity. And that's kind of how I view that. How do you look at and define these two things for your focus base?
You know, so for me, strength, so rowers don't need to be super strong, right? We're more like cyclist, right? Like a Grand Tour cyclist than we are or a marathon runner than we are a power lifter. Um, so when it comes to strength for us, it's type 1 muscle building, right? Is kind of the main thing. And so doing the lifts properly, right, and being able to not just go till failure is important no matter where you are in your rowing journey, at least at the beginning. Um, but yeah, so for the beginning, it's kind of just making sure you can actually do the motions and you don't hurt yourself, because the last thing a rowing coach wants to hear is that the rower hurt themselves in the gym trying to lift heavy weight, because that doesn't even make them that much faster anyway. And then in terms of aerobic capacity, right? Like, um, the biggest thing is being able to just row as much as you can. And the best way to maximize that is to not go as hard as you can every stroke. Because if you go as hard as you can every stroke, you're going to tire yourself out and then you want to take an off day for a month, right? So you want to kind of pace yourself correctly, right? It's better to do three 45-minute workouts over 3 days than one 90-minute workout one day and then two days of rest, right? You did more workouts. Um, you did more overall work. And it builds the capillaries, it builds the type 1 muscle that you need to be fast. So the best thing is to do quantity, is kind of the biggest thing, and not versus actual speed.
So essentially quantity of zone two versus like trying to train like higher things of like zone three, zone four,
Yeah,
which
just
focus more on
quantity.
speed.
Yeah, quantity of just the time of work you're doing, right? And the best way to do that is to do zone two.
Hmm.
If you did zone three for two 90-minute workouts, like you're just gonna tire yourself out, and then you're gonna produce the catabolic, anti-catabolic hormones that will just prevent you from actually getting faster. And then you wonder why you're putting all this work in and you're not improving.
Oh man, that's to me that's like how most people look at running in a nutshell. We'll talk about that later. I saw this one post. It was David Goggins, and I don't know if someone put this caption over him or if it was him saying it. He goes, "Everyone talks about zone two this, threshold that. Whatever happened to just running until you get injured?" And I don't know if that was him or someone put that over him, but it sounds like something he would say. So, saying all that to say, team, you don't want to run to get injured. It's about a dose response because we're trying to elicit an adaptation. We're trying to elicit a certain change. Speaking about certain changes, this running form, this person on treadmill, this is bad. We'll move along.
He looks like he's about to fall over.
Right,
I've done that. I've
it's
fallen
a
on treadmill.
it's a heel strike and it's not good. Boom. All right, why build a base before specialization? Alice and I kind of already leaned into that a little bit, but it's because you get injured, right? If you don't have a base and you try to go too hard too quickly, you get injured. And like a really good example as far as like strength is concerned is if your body tries to exert more power than it has strength to do, you tear something. That's just how that works. I'm not sure what the equivalent of that would be in rowing or how that injury would look, Alex, but how does that equate to rowing or athletics?
You don't you don't build kind of like the proper technique. You're going to put strain on places that don't need to be strained. So, like for example, in rowing, there's a point in the rowing stroke which carries the most load, right? It's the where the boat travels the slowest. And what a lot of people do because they don't have the correct technique is they use their lower back to move the boat as well as their legs, right? It's like their legs can't do it by themselves, so the lower back kind of joins in. And by doing that, you put so much strain on the lower back, and then they're out with an injury, right? Or if they don't learn how to do both sides of sweeping, and then they develop a muscle imbalance. So it's really important to just build that base, build that proper form before you can do anything like row as fast as you can and do all that stuff because you're just going to injure yourself.
I would say a really good example of why you need your base for rowing is a 2K test because if you go hard, if you go out the gate on a 2K test cooking, you're gonna get cooked.
Oh
That
yeah,
you'll show up at that the third 500 will come to greet you and and you
not
won't be
fun.
ready for it.
You
So
feel
that
great in the first 250,
was
but yeah, no matter what, that knockout punch is coming.
and knockout punch is coming. So saying all to say, guys, you want to build your base. It helps you. There's one benefit of A, you get to be and remain uninjured, which means you have continued progress.
Yeah.
And then B, another comparison is on a performance standpoint, you actually get to perform better and not crash and burn on like an aerobic test, whatever, if you're an aerobic athlete. Boom.
Ability is availability.
Stability is
Yeah.
available. I like,
No,
oh,
no, no. The best ability is availability.
oh, the less best ability is available. Ooh, I still like it.
Come on, man. It's the beginner athletes love that stuff, all right? So, the more they work, the better they'll be. Don't go too hard. Yeah.
I like it. All right, so right here, there's just some definitions of like strength stability from like NSCA, which is one of the most uh, highly pushed. Oh, not highly pushed. Like as far as strength conditioning is concerned, NSCA is like the
Fully
forefront, right?
accredited. Yeah, it's
Most
credited.
accredited, right? So like strength is the ability for
Pitch of
muscle
an
muscle
exam.
group to produce maximal force against an external resistance. This is important because it's not like a function of time. Power is essentially this, but like add in a short amount of time, boom, it becomes power as far as definition is concerned. And then stability is the ability to maintain desired position, static stability, or movement dynamic stability. Once again, more so related to athletics, despite motion, force, or control disturbances. Because essentially, uh, when lifting, you're less likely to be disturbed, but in rowing, like you're on a rowing stroke, you could catch a crab. Oh God, you could, you could get a wave. Like who knows? And so it's your ability to stay stable despite like those things is why I view strength and stability like the way I do. Next, talk about some aerobic base. Alex, what is an aerobic base? Feel free to read.
Foundation of aerobic fitness and endurance developed through moderate intensity, long duration exercise, often referred to as base training, long, slow distance LSD training, not the fun LSD, the bad LSD.
Bad
Wait,
LSD.
hold on. I don't know. We're not promoting drugs here. Never mind. We're all about fitness, right?
Whoa.
Um, yeah. So scrap that part. Anyway, so yeah, so that's like the zone two training that we were talking about. The goal here is to develop as many capillaries in your muscles, that type 1 muscle, to make sure that your muscles, when they work, they have the fuel, they have the oxygen um, to do that, right? Because the longer we can delay that lactate monster, the better we are going to perform.
Hmm. The lactate monster. That's one way to refer to it. Um, so we've gotten this far. We've just kind of like hammered in this thought of the base, the base, the base, the base. You need to build it, right? So like what happens like after you build a base might be something that everyone is like wondering here. And we're gonna tell you about it. You get to perform or specialize. So for those watching, um these are all ways you can perform or specialize. So, person flexing, obviously hypertrophy, that's bodybuilding, increased muscle growth. Specialized Olympic lifting, power and strength. You have the sprinter, so running speed. The cyclist, that's more of an endurance, kind of aligns with more with rowing. And then once again, the person deadlifting that aligns more with like strength as far as like a specialization. Alex, talk about how after someone has built their base, what does performance in rowing look like? Is it still building a base? Is it different on game day? How does that relate to like either assessments or races? Like, talk to us about it.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is it's always kind of building base with rowing, just because that is the most important thing. But there is always specialization, especially for masters rowers. So a masters rower is just basically anyone over the age of 21, and it's kind of not a professional, right? Um, but it's like there's always going to be weak points of where you are. So, for example, John before rowing was a power lifter, right? Power lifter, weightlifter, you
Olympic
know,
lifting.
Olympic lifter, right? So his like once we taught him how to row, or his coach taught him how to row, the goal was, okay, so where are you weak, right? So a coach needs to kind of do a fair amount of performance testing, right? There's various tests that you could do here, but they kind of work out which zones they're weak in, and then they have to kind of like create a training plan that kind of targets that, right? But then for someone who's maybe a swimmer or a marathon runner that is quite small, maybe that they need to focus on, building that lactate tolerance or building that type 2 muscle and power and all that stuff, right? So it's kind of just kind of once you've built that base, which is kind of like for everybody at the beginning, then you can kind of like, okay, where do you need the most work? And then when it comes to coaching a team of like novices, it's like where do they need the most work? And you kind of have to pinpoint that because that's when you're kind of limited, right? When you coach 20 different people at once, then you kind of have to kind of work out how can I best serve most of them at least, right? But with rowing, especially, it's usually base just because of the demands of rowing when it comes to aerobic base.
So essentially, the focus is always base, but there, even if the focus is base, there are still ways you can and will specialize. Well, man. All right, so you can't see it because our faces are here, but the journey as far as like athletic performance and your first steps of fitness is cyclical, team. You will always most likely return to where you started. So, for example, strength and stability is your base. After you specialize, you'll probably come back to your base. And we kind of talked about rowing. Your base is always rowing. But for example, what you specialize for Olympic lifting, for example, the things that you focus on in Olympic lifting might create compensations during your season. Most sports have in seasons and off seasons. So you have, preseason, which is normally like involves like what we call like general physical preparedness, and then you have like your in-season training, and then you have like your postseason and like off season, right? And like your training, each of those things look different, but then you go back to being preseason, in season, and you kind of just rinse and repeats. And the same thing goes for general fitness, right? Like if you start off with strength and stability and like you see a lot of progress, but eventually the progress you might be trying to make after you get to a certain point may require more strength and stability before you can progress more within your fitness journey. And that's totally okay. Just understand that you just because you start off with strength and stability and or building your base doesn't mean you never will return to it. Like you always will return to your base to build so you can build more. Would that be a fair thing to say, Alex?
Season. Um, like it's kind of year round, especially for high level athletes. Um, and so there's not necessarily like a preseason, regular season, postseason, off season type thing that some sports have. Like I'm thinking more like football, basketball, baseball, right? Your main American sports. Or hockey, ice hockey, for Canada. I need to
Okay.
represent Canada now.
Or lacrosse.
Sure. Yeah, that's technically one of their sports, isn't it? That's one of their national sports.
National sport.
Um, but yeah, but the biggest thing is like you're always going to kind of work on base at the very beginning of the year. But how long you stay in base kind of depends on how much you need base, right? And so some coaches and training plans will pivot from base like only after like 6 months, right? But they might, like there's talks of I don't want to go too fancy because I know this is for big beginners, but like pyramidal training, right? Where you're focusing on base and long, hard workouts at the beginning in the fall season, like in your September, October, November, December, and then kind of more like sprint training, polarized training in the spring. So, January, February, March, April, May, whenever your race is. And they say like that is beneficial to them. But then some coaches are saying, well, no, it's actually polarization for the fall and the spring, right? It's that kind of doing that high intensity workouts and then low intensity, right? Some believe in pyramidal training the whole year round. There's different types, but it all kind of depends on what their athletes need the most.
And which, once again, it's kind of the goal is to try to catch all. Like how can my strategy best catch all these people versus just like a couple of them?
Yeah.
Well, all right. So, um, we talked a lot about like our first steps in fitness. Um, but I feel like talking about like your fitness without kind of talking about, I feel like nutrition is often the red-headed stepchild left in the corner of the room that is often ignored when talked about fitness because there is a lot of impact that nutrition can have on your fitness or on your athletic performance. Alex, what do you know or what experience do you have as a coach and in the field of rowing, and how can nutrition impact the well-being of your rowers?
You nailed it a little bit. A little insulting to redheaded people. I come from Scotland, by the way. We have like the most redheads there are. So, but also not wrong because, yeah, there's a reason Scotland doesn't do much in anything. Um, anyway, but nutrition is definitely it's the most frustrating thing because you can see athletes just completely they did everything right. They did everything right in terms of the work you asked them to do. Because at the end of the day, the coach's job is to provide a good training plan, and the athlete's job is to do that training plan as well as they can, right? And so I've seen great athletes do that. And then it comes to race day, they've done that, you've prepared them the best they can, they've done the best they can, and then you kind of find out maybe after the workout or before the workout. Hopefully, if it's before the workout, then you just know what's going to happen. If it's after the workout, it's like, okay, yeah, that's why it happened. Um, that, they ate the wrong thing before workout, or they haven't, you know, um, that's like if they don't do well during a test, but like maybe it's like maybe they don't do well on a test, and it's like, okay, well, you did all the work, but what did you eat this week? And you find out that it was all like McDonald's and processed foods. They waited, they skipped meals. They didn't eat enough sugars or carbs, they were all this type of stuff. You hear all of it. And this is kind of like the most frustrating element because for an athlete too, but also for a coach because controlling someone's diet is definitely not something most coaches will do unless you specifically ask for it. And because it's also a sensitive topic, right? There's a lot of people who the reason they do fitness is because they want to be able to eat more, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a topic that it's a hard conversation with a coach, with an athlete. Um, but yeah, it's one that is absolutely necessary if you want to actually perform really well. Um, if you're I'm never going to recommend to not eat well, but um if you're not too worried about performance, then there's a bit more leeway. But especially if you care about how you perform, you need to care about what you eat. And it's not just about, I know you're about to show us a slide of just like the four types, but it's timing, it's what you eat, it's when all this stuff. It's because so there's I think you probably want examples, but I've seen athletes just like they skip a meal, right? A lot of workouts happen early in the mornings, like before school starts or before work starts, and so they're like, oh, it's too early to eat, and then they go to a workout and they have no energy during the workout, right? Or they eat the wrong thing. They have like a smoothie or a high fiber right before the um workout. And it's like, well, high fiber, requires a lot to digest, but your body's kind of using the blood to kind of fuel your muscles, not fuel your digestive system. So you end up kind of shitting yourself very much. But yeah. So, and same with protein, right? That's also not good, right? So that's like, why a test can go badly, but it's like also just like waiting a few hours because you really want to take a nap, right? Like we're all tired after workout and you really just want to take a nap after your workout because you're exhausted. No, you got to go eat. Like the workout doesn't end when you finish the workout. The workout ends when you've properly fueled yourself after the workout. And that's kind of the frustrating thing about getting fit and performing well. It's not easy, but that's what also makes it feel really good when you do perform because you did all the hard work to do it. So yeah.
It's a good way to say it, man. But you already talked about it. We have the four principles of nutrition, guys. We have calories, your macros, nutrient timing, and nutrient quality. And you can manipulate these four factors in different ways in order to get whatever adaptation, athletic performance, or hit whatever weight loss, fat loss goal that you're trying to hit. These are the four things that we would implement in order to help you do that. I don't want to dive too deep into that because we're kind of like running a little bit low on time on this podcast. As our first, teamed up podcast, so we might be a little lengthy with the words and chats, guys. I apologize, but yes, these are the four things we would manipulate as far as coaches in order to get you the results that you want to get. Saying that all to say, this is Alex and I before I go perform at nationals, and Alex said something really good to me at the time. He said, if you want to go far, you go alone. If you want to if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And getting a coach, a rowing coach, Alex is my current rowing coach, um, is gonna help me go far. And you don't want to going far alone. It's gonna be kind of hard. And so, if you're interested in upgrading your nutrition, whether it be for performance or whether it be for fat loss, the interest form is here on the slide. Feel free to screenshot it and also put it in the caption. So feel free to go back and click on that and fill out the interest form and let me or one of the members on my team help you upgrade your nutrition. Any other nutrition tidbits, Alex? Say that all again. Your thing went real quiet.
No, eat. You gotta eat the right food. It's infuriating. I know. The good thing about being fit is you do get to eat a lot, and if you like eating, it's good that you get to eat a lot. It is expensive to eat a lot, but it's good that you can eat a lot. But you got to eat the right stuff, and you got to time it right, especially if you care about performance. I get those that, don't want to focus too much on that, and that's fine, but just know like you are giving up a performance metric, right? Or an ability to perform. And as long as you're okay with that, but unfortunately you can't skip nutrition. Yeah.
Once again, the redheaded stepchild in the corner of the room. The
No.
redheaded
Okay.
Scottish stepchild in the corner of the room.
Hey, hey, hey. All right. Go Scotland.
Go Scotland. All right, guys. This is some contact us. This is my email. This is Alex's email. This is the Empirical Fitness website. If you are a rower and you're interested in upgrading your rowing abilities, whether you're a novice or whether you're a skilled rower, I highly recommend hitting my man up. He's helped me level up my rowing, and we've even tried to experiment with some new strategies that could help you and could change, revolutionize the way rowing is done. I'm not going to talk about it here because it's not the place for that. We can't give out trade secrets just yet. Um, but that's happening, and you could possibly be some of the first people to get your hands on that if you reach out to Alex at this email here. But of course, guys, if you're looking for nutrition, looking to upgrade that up at Empirical Fitness, we do that. Come let me or one of my team members help you out. Thank you for watching this presentation. Alex, thank you for joining me on this. I enjoyed it as always.